When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras. This is an old saying taught to young medical students, suggesting that the simplest answer is often the most likely. An example of Occam's razor. You know, so they don't go diagnosing scabs as leprosy. As guiding a principle as it may be, one is always left wondering, what if the answer isn't that simple? What if the way to solve your problems isn't right under your nose, but rather a complicated rigmarole of schemes, loopholes, and adventures? What if the way to improve your country's economy isn't to make small incremental changes that slowly push it towards a brighter future? What if the solution is to tear the whole thing down, rip it limb from chud limb, and rebuild the whole system from scratch like some wretched homunculus, leaving out all the bureaucracy and regulations you felt bogged the system down, and keeping only the parts you thought were beneficial? This would be great. A utopia, a paradise even. And to the libertarians who believe this, Occam's razor falls on deaf ears. Webster's dictionary defines a libertarian as an advocate of the doctrine of free will. And free will is something that many libertarians feel is lacking in Western societies. To remedy this, the most hardcore adherents of libertarianism have tried everything. From building floating platforms in the middle of the ocean, taking over a small town only to have it overrun by bears, and even using others' desire for freedom to trick them into buying land in a country that doesn't exist. If starting a new country from scratch was easy, you'd think we would have done it by now. But alas, you can't blame the libertarians for being dreamers. So let's explore these attempts at a societal exit as we descend the libertarian paradise iceberg.
Without government, warlords will take over society.
It's been a real shame how it's been treated and how the Libertarian Party has been treated.
With government, warlords have already taken over society.
Starting off with the most tame and pragmatic attempt at a libertarian exit, we have the New Hampshire Free State Project. Did you know that New Hampshire already has no state income tax, no state sales tax, no seatbelt laws, no helmet laws, and even permitless purchase and open carry on firearms? That sounds ripe for a libertarian takeover, and takeover, they've tried. The premise behind the Free State Project is simple. Gather a bunch of libertarians, identify a place for them, and get them all to move together to create a libertarian stronghold in the US. Since the early 2000s, the Free State Project has been attempting to relocate 20,000 libertarians to New Hampshire in order to exert the fullest practical effort in the creation of a society in which the maximum role of government is the protection of life, liberty, and property. This is according to the project's mission statement. And this ties nicely with the state's motto of live free or die. This sounds simple, this sounds nice, but when you're dealing with ideologues, you always run into problems. The Free State's goal is to get into positions of power and then change things. In 2022, members of the Free State mobilized to cut Croydon, New Hampshire's school board budget from $1.7 million to just $800,000, arguing that extracurricular activities like music and sports aren't a public right. They've also proposed to secede from the US. It seems the Free Staters have made the assumption that because New Hampshire is libertarian, everyone there is an ideological libertarian who dream of the day when the state operates as some sort of crypto patchwork libertarian economic free zone. But the average person is not caught up on big ideological questions. Most people are just concerned living day to day, trying to create a better future for their children. But try and tell that to the Free Staters who took the whole thing a step farther and tried to take an entire town. That's a story for later on. Until then, let's go to our next and final surface level libertarian paradise. In this recent wave of crypto pumps, DeFi schemes, and exciting new ways to make money, many countries have begun looking further in on the fintech bandwagon.
Archie, you've been working for 12 hours. Let's go get lunch.
Oh, God. Oh, man.
Your face is so f***ed up.
Oh, God. Oh, the eye bags and the wrinkles. You look so bad. Holy shit. You make me sick. I'm getting nauseated looking at you. You've never seen someone look worse than the face I'm looking at right now. You look like a piece of shit. You look like actual shit.
Here, you need T. Chanley, a complete skincare system.
Skincare is complicated for guys. There's so many products to choose, you have no idea what they do, you don't have no idea when to use them, and you don't know which ones to pick. That's why T. Chanley streamlines that process for you. You order this package and it includes everything you need. It tells you what to use, when to use it, exactly how much to use. You literally can't mess it up. You got face wash, AM, PM moisturizer, exfoliating scrub, made in the USA, over 10,000 5-star reviews, literally everything you need. Women are gonna look at you and be like, oh wow, your girlfriend must have taught you some stuff about skincare. You're gonna say, no, I'm single. And I just use T. Chanley. And because T. Chanley is sponsoring this video. They're offering you an amazing deal. Click the first link in the description and get 40% off your first skincare system and a free gift. Plus, as a member, you also get 20% off for life. This month, one of the free gift options is a silicone body scrubber, something I literally use every day in the shower. $20 value, absolutely free, absolute game changer. Stop putting it off. Order T. Chanley today. Don't wait any longer. Click the first link in the description to start your skincare journey. Special economic zones have existed for decades in order to foster trade in countries without adhering to all the federal rules. Or countries like Hong Kong and Singapore, microstates that exist within another country. My favorite example of this is Liechtenstein, a micronation on the border of Switzerland and Austria, known for its banking secrecy. Also known for being on the OECD's blacklist for uncooperative tax haven countries, along with Andorra and Monaco. Banking makes up more than 14% of this tiny country's workforce and has more registered companies than citizens. The prince claims the banking secrecy is a holdover from World War II after they protected Jewish assets. But a lot of it actually comes from harboring the assets of Nazi-affiliated companies and Hitler's associates. Sounds like centrist scum to me. Digital economic zones aim to take this a step farther by giving up the need for actual territory and physical space, truly embracing the decentralized finance moniker. The small island nation of Palau, whose capital I won't dare try to pronounce, now offers e-residency to purchase for anyone who wants it. For the measly price of $248, you, right now, can go buy e-residency in Palau. That's the same price as 12 to 14 beers at some lib bar in downtown Toronto. But why would you want this? This residency is used to bypass regulatory crypto exchange bans all over the world, like Binance, which has been banned in the US since 2019. There's also the Catawba Digital Economic Zone, a native reservation on the banks of the Catawba River north of Charlotte. Did you know that 60% of all Fortune 500 companies are registered in Delaware, including Alphabet and Amazon? This is due to Delaware's more lax regulations and business taxes. Catawba aims to cut in on Delaware's monopoly by allowing decentralized autonomous organizations and companies dealing in digital assets to set up there without a need for physical space. I want to take this time to say that I love adventure, and I love new ideas. And although I'm going to clown on a lot of the upcoming examples, it doesn't mean that I don't think people shouldn't fuck around and find out. If you're watching this video, I encourage you to traverse new ideological ground to start a micronation, and then invite me there, so I can get the fuck out of Canada. Also, sub to my YouTube and my Patreon, and I'll invite you to my micronation, where everyone must smile. And now we drop below the surface to the scuffed realm. These are the kind of stories you've probably watched a 2-hour video essay on when you should have been hustling. But I digress. Let's start with everyone's favorite GTA 5 location, Slab City. Slab City is a squad of campers east of the Salton Sea in California, and it's unironically the most successful attempt at a libertarian exit we're gonna cover. Referred to as the last free place in America, Slab City is what remains of an old World War II training base. When it was a camp, it was called Camp Dunlap, used to train soldiers for the North African campaign under the heat of the Mojave Desert. The camp was closed in 1945 and dismantling began. A skeleton crew remained at the camp until 1956, when all that remained of the camp's 65 concrete structures were the slabs they were built on. And in 1961, the land was sold back to the state of California. No one's really sure who first squatted on the land. Rumors have circulated that it's workers who were working in the area who set up RVs. Others claim it was a few veterans who used to stay there and came to escape the winter. Regardless, Slab City now has a permanent population of 600, which peaks at 4,000 during the winter months. The residents of Slab City pay no taxes and in return receive nothing from the state. That means no running water or garbage pickup. There's countless documentaries and poverty travel videos you can go and watch to check out Slab City if you want to take a deeper dive into what life is actually like at the squad. It's generally safe, comprised of hippies and drifters who just want to hang out, smoking weed, sculpture gardens, 16 to 21 Modelos on a Friday night. What could be better? You, watching this right now, you spend your whole life hustling, drop shipping, doing gay OnlyFans, and you work your whole life sitting in front of a screen. You do this all day just to one day have the opportunity to do what Slab City's residents do every day. There's a whole community of people who just bypassed the grind. They did a frame-perfect wall skip right to the grill and beer section of the game. You think money will make you happy? You think any of this will make you happy? Find God! Touch grass and find God! Libertarians are divided into two groups: poor schizos and rich schizos. Where Slab City is more geared towards the former, it's not as welcoming to the utopian tech bros who dream of power, conquest, and remodeling the world. If you fit into this camp, let me tell you about Seasteading. Started by Patrick Freeman, grandson of famed neoliberal economist Milton Friedman, the Steading Institute is a think tank of sorts that aims to create floating autonomous communities in international waters outside of political control. The project was started in 2008 and immediately received $500,000 in seed capital by none other than the anarcho-capitalist boogeyman, Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is going to come up a lot in these stories, and that's why I'm painting him in the background this whole time. If there's some interest, I'm gonna make some prints of this available soon. The next year in 2009, the Institute launched Ephemeral Isle, a Burning Man type festival / proof of concept in the Sacramento Delta just north of Oakland, California, where boats and rafts are connected into one giant platform. And after the first year, the Institute moved on to bigger and better things. Now, once again, before I keep going, I have to explain a very crucial concept that's gonna come up a lot in this video. Network states and patchwork states. The core thesis here is the evolution of the nation state. Almost all countries have inherited governments and borders founded on ethnic or religious similarity. Or in the case of Africa and the Middle East, the borders are holdovers from the colonial era. There is yet to be a country founded purely on an ideological basis. The network staters want to found countries that are completely post-racial and post-cultural, where the unity of the nation will be founded on governance and ideology, like anarcho-capitalism or democratic socialism. These network states would be micronations like Andorra or Singapore, and the government will be subject to the free marketplace the same way a company is. Basically, you have a bunch of nations. If one of the nations has a really good government and functions really well, it grows and people want to move there. If the governing system doesn't work, then it fails and people leave to go to the better ones. This would optimize the process of governance and fast track us to finding the best possible system of government to govern a country. How or when these people plan to start thousands of tiny countries and expect the people to have such mobility and such an amount of wealth they can move wherever they want, whenever they want, like picking stocks, I have no fucking clue, but fuck. Do I love dreamers? Anyway, after Ephemeral Isle, not much happened with the project for a few years. Until they get the bright idea. What if we just build in international waters? F it, just build. Millions must build. After a short-lived failed attempt in French Polynesia, our next character enters this story. Bitcoin millionaire Chad Elbertowski and his Thai wife Nadia Superny. This cracker and his hot wife thought they could just build a house off the coast of Thailand. Wait. Phuket, Thailand. Built 20 kilometers off the coast of Phuket, which for some reason they thought was international waters. This is the very first actualized attempt at a proper seastead. An oil rig-like structure built on a floating pillar, nice and close to the equator, where hurricanes can't form. But after just 1 week in his new kingdom, the Thai police came knocking. The Thai government charged them with threatening Thai sovereignty, a charge punishable by life in prison or death. The couple promptly fled the country and had to go into hiding from the Thai government. On this whole debacle, Patrick Friedman had this to say. 12 nautical miles is not the high seas. Do not listen to anyone who tells you that the high seas start at 12 nautical miles. It means they haven't even spent 5 minutes reading Wikipedia. Now our next topic is a micronation that's been covered ad nauseum. I mean, there's literally a new million-view video essay on this topic like twice a year. So instead of going into boring details for AdSense revenue, I'm gonna try to give you some facts and analysis that you probably haven't heard before. A view into my wretched, sick, twisted mind. I'm of course talking about Sealand. In the early 1960s, the BBC had a monopoly over radio stations in the UK, playing mostly old patriotic classical music. And even when the Beatles were the hottest honkies on earth, the BBC would play their songs once or twice before going back to that old school unk shit. The British public were frustrated and had enough. Enter the rise of pirate radio. Utilizing World War II air defense towers built just outside of territorial waters off the coast of the UK, pirate radio DJs would set up shop and play pop music for mainland Brits to tune into. The Animals, the Beatles, the Stones, all that good shit the BBC would not play. At pirate radio's peak in 1966, almost half of Brits admitted to tuning into pirate radio. Jack Moore and his daughter Jane were happily operating a pirate radio station called Wonderful Radio London. Hi, editing art chat here. It was actually Radio Caroline, not Wonderful Radio London. On a platform known as Ruff's Tower, built 6 nautical miles off the coast of Suffolk, well outside UK's territorial water claim of 3 nautical miles. Until 1967, when Paddy Roy Bates stormed the tower and took the whole thing over in a hostile takeover, planning to set up his own radio station and move his family there, although he never got the chance. The BBC added new radio stations in 1967, even hiring some ex-pirate radio DJs to man them, and Bates' plan was all for naught. So what did he do? He said, fuck my chud life, I'm gonna build me my own country. Such begins the heavily documented micronation of Sealand. Sealand is like the Chris Chan of micronations. It is a dense enough story to write a whole book about it, and many have been written. So instead of that, let's go into some niche and relevant geopolitical history. In 1933, America, along with some other Caribbean and South American nations, all got together in Montevideo, Uruguay, to discuss what makes a country, known as the Montevideo Convention Agreement. The nations came to the conclusion that a new country must have the 4 following aspects. 1. Permanent population. 2. Defined borders. 3. A functioning government. And 4. The ability to do trade with other countries. And this document is not legally binding or that followed at all. All that makes a country is whether other countries agree you're a country. But this didn't stop Bates from being a dreamer. Sealand had 3 of the 4 things figured out. Population, borders, and government. But it didn't really have the ability to do trade with other countries yet. As a literal concrete slab off the coast of Suffolk, Sealand had nothing to offer other countries, up until Bates got hit with a blessing in disguise. In 1978, while Bates was away, terrorists came and boarded Sealand, taking his son Michael Bates hostage for several days, before he was transferred to the Netherlands and then sent back to the UK. His son Michael then hatched the genius plan to take back Sealand, called Operation Trident, which literally just involved boarding Sealand in a helicopter. He lands his helicopter, the terrorists surrender and are held as prisoners at Sealand. The terrorists consisted of Dutch and German nationals, and both countries petitioned the UK for the prisoners' release. But because of a precedent set a few years earlier, when the UK tried to get Bates on pirate radio charges, but decided they can't because he's legally outside of UK territorial waters, England could do nothing about the situation. Sealand willingly gave up the Dutch prisoners back to the Netherlands, but decided to keep the German one. Why was this? Because the German was a Sealand passport holder. Sealand at that point just gave out passports to anyone they vibe checked or vaguely knew. That's why I keep saying terrorists in air quotes, because I'm pretty sure these guys are all friends and just like LARPing and hanging out. Anyways, because he had a Sealand passport, they put him on trial for treason and kept him as a prisoner. They kept him for so long that Germany had to send a diplomat from Germany to Sealand to negotiate the prisoner's release, even though he spent the whole time just like playing soccer and drinking beer with Paddy. All of this was the final piece of the puzzle for Paddy. Sealand had now successfully negotiated with another country and done trade, fulfilling the final step of the Montevideo Convention. And now, in Bates' eyes, and literally nobody else's, Sealand was now a real country. Sealand still exists to this day. Paddy Bates passed away in 2012, and now his son Michael runs the place. He makes podcast appearances, writes books, and you can find tons of Sealand merchandise on their website. Knighthood, official ID cards, a personalized email address. If you have someone in your life that you truly don't give a fuck about, let them become a Baron of Sealand. Give them Baroness status on Sealand. They can hang it up next to the star you bought them last year and the fucking piece of Scotland you bought them 2 years ago. Sealand is dope and all, but what if you like drugs? Hard drugs, soft drugs. You ever smoke that Canadian government weed? That shit's got you rotating shapes in your head for hours. That shit's got you going crappy butt mode. Also, what if you want to live with more people besides your Anglo wife and your precious boy Michael? Well, let me tell you about Freetown Christiania. Built on centuries-old military barracks in the Danish capital of Copenhagen, Freetown Christiania is a community with a rich history. On September 26, 1971, a group of journalists from an alternative newspaper called Hovet Billet claimed the land for their own. And by 1973, the Danish government had granted Freetown Christiania social experiment status. Although the almost 1,000 residents pay 250 euros a month in rent and receive basic community services from the city, most decisions are made through direct democracy. And after going back and forth with the Danish government for decades, regaining and losing its status over and over again, it's safe to say that at this point, Christiania is here to stay, unless it's destroyed by gang warfare. You see, Christiania holds one of Denmark's biggest tourist attractions that have been causing them more and more problems over the years. An open-air cannabis market called Pusher Street, where residents and tourists have been able to purchase weed out of market stalls while the authorities turn a blind eye. But here's the thing, having an illegal drug market just on your main drag in your community starts to cause problems when people start getting angry at each other. So there's been a massive increase in gang violence in the last few years. In 2016, a 25-year-old man shot 2 police officers and killed a bystander before being gunned down by the police. These events have caused the residents to come together and rip the market stalls down piece by piece multiple times, but the drug dealers always make their way back. This once again came to a head in 2023 when 2 armed men opened fire down Pusher Street, hitting 4 people and killing 1 of them. This was the final straw, and the residents of Christiania, which also holds 200 children, had enough, barricading themselves inside the neighborhood and literally ripping up Pusher Street cobblestone brick by brick, as well as destroying all the drug stalls in an attempt to permanently push out the weed trade. Now in 2024, Christiania is restructuring itself on its community-centric anarchist roots. And now we descend lower on the berg, into the wacky zone, where dreamers, grifters, and billionaires try to stake their claim in the new world with convoluted schemes. But who am I to judge? I'm literally making a fucking Iceberg video. I could be building a country from scratch on a retired cruise ship, but instead I'm making an Iceberg video. Anyway, on the topic of cruise ships, crypto, and techno capital, let me tell you about the MS Satoshi. Remember our friend Chad Albertowski? He's back, and he's got friends. In October 2020, him and 2 of his boys, Grant Ramont and Rudiger Koch. I researched this extensively, and no, he is not related to those Koch brothers. Trust me, I really wanted it to. Purchased a cruise ship while the industry was collapsing from the Wuhan flu. These 3 musketeers purchased the Pacific Dawn for $9.5 million. A 245-foot vessel built for boomers to spend their final years sipping Walmart margies and bossing around immigrants. The 3 renamed the ship to the MS Satoshi, named after the original author of the Bitcoin white paper and its creator. The original plan was to sail the ship out of the Caribbean across the Atlantic and permanently dock it in Panama, where would-be residents would start companies, trade crypto, and basically live the libertarian Libertarian dream. The ship's 777 rooms will be rented out for $500 to $700 a month. But this would come with a few stipulations, many of which were outlined in a Reddit AMA hosted by Chad himself. Microwaves would not be allowed, but crypto mining rigs were heavily encouraged. All the residents were not allowed to cook in their own rooms, but could only buy food from the ship's restaurant, where they'd be offered a 20% discount. And don't get them f***ing started on the pets. Pets could only be kept in rooms with balconies. The pet's weight could not exceed 9 kilograms. Pet owners were required to purchase a specific brand of grass litter box. And if your pet disturbed guests more than 3 times in 1 month or 5 times in 1 year, you and your little fellow would be asked to leave. That's so bureaucratic, I don't think a homeowners association could do worse. Now, these 3 chuds may have had good plans for their own bureaucracy, but something they didn't anticipate was the regulations of the shipping industry itself. You see, the shipping industry is almost as heavily regulated as aviation. When thousands of lives are at stake, it's good to be redundant. Because of this, the ship had to operate with a crew of 40 people at all times, which all needed to be salaried and accommodated. I think the guys really just planned on sailing the ship themselves with no one else. On top of this, fuel was costing them $12,000 a day, which meant the ship was running a cost of $1 million a month just to be docked in Panama. All of this was realized on the MS Satoshi's maiden voyage across the Atlantic in the middle of the ocean. The dream was dead before it began. Too late to turn back, the Dreamers 3 sold the ship to a scrapyard in Alang, India. But in a weird twist of fate, they couldn't even do that because it's illegal to sell ships between non-signatory countries. Until they finally found a buyer, British Ambassador Cruise Lines offered to buy the ship for them so they could operate a new cruise rate for seniors. Old people spending what little vacation and time they had left to experience the freedom that Chad, Grant, and Rudiger thought was a human right. Grant spent his Christmas that year wandering around the ship with the master key, going into all the rooms that said staff only and getting a private tour of the engine bay, spending his final moments of freedom on the sold ship before it was to set sail back to Europe. Hey, at the very least, at least the Satoshi got off the ground, a feat we have yet to attribute to our next utopia scheme. Based on the idea of network and patchwork states, this next utopia will be built from the ground up, starting with citizens on the internet before being carved out of the ground in whatever nation will host it. Backed by Thiel, built on dreams, it's Praxis time. The most ideological of libertarians believe everything should fall to the invisible hand of the free market. Why do we get to choose the businesses we shop at, but not the government that rules us and the government system they use to rule? In a bid to amend this, Praxis plans to create demand-first governance. Step 1 of this plan involves recruiting future citizens from cities like New York and San Francisco. And this means getting people to commit to move to a city that has not been built yet. Step 2, raise capital and funds to build the city.
That was easy.
Step 3, find land and partner with a local government to create a special economic zone. The top candidates for this are Morocco, Italy, and Montenegro. Once all of this is acquired, Praxis can begin building the city and move in the city's first 10,000 residents. Sound kind of confusing and unrealistic? Yes. The project's founder, Dryden Brown, has been criticized for being big on dreams and light on specifics. Him and the Praxis team lived together in a loft in Soho. Brown was born and raised in Santa Barbara, being homeschooled to pursue professional surfing before becoming a hedge fund manager after college. After being fired from his hedge fund job and starting Praxis, Brown has been known to hire famous directors to make documentaries about him, including American History X director Tony Kaye. In my professional opinion, is it very likely that Praxis ever gets off the ground? Hell no. But is it fun to be rich and throw parties with 20-something millionaires at a loft in Soho? High on shrooms, dreaming of the new potential neon gilded age? Hell yeah. That's the sole reason why I spend 12 hours a day in a Toronto YouTuber studio. If Praxis sounds interesting and I did a good job of selling it to you, you can apply right now at Praxis.com. You also get one of these steel visas with a laser etched portrait of yourself. That's so cool. You know what? I'm joining Praxis. I don't give a Okay, so imagine Praxis with all its riches, schemes, and teal bucks, but it actually exists. And it's actually a good idea. You, right now, can relocate to a tropical island with other like-minded tech bros and build your middleman of middlemen logistics company with little regulation as you sip some margies to Caribbean rhythms. Oh baby, I'm talking about Prospera. In the early 2010s, then president of Honduras, Porfirio Lobo Sosa, introduced ZAs to the country, also known as Zones for Employment and Economic Development, citing special free trade zones in China like Shenzhen, Macau, and Shanghai. The idea was to introduce autonomous regions to the country, which was still plagued by gang violence, and a low GDP per capita, making it one of the most unstable countries in Central America. These regions would have a high level of autonomy, subject only to Honduras legal code. A poor country inviting micronations to set up shop? Sounds like the perfect place for a libertarian paradise. Prospera is a city building platform similar to Praxis, Praxis currently building its first flagship city in St. John's Bay on the island of Roatan in Honduras, a former British colony with the island's 60,000 residents speaking primarily English. On the 58 acres of land, Prospera plans on building a city with the same principles as Praxis. Basically, make it so good that people can't ignore it. For example, the way they handle regulatory bodies is actually genius. Let's say you want to start a biomed company out of Prospera. You still have to follow a regulatory body, but you get to pick which one from a list of the world's leading countries. Let's say Japan has very streamlined and efficient regulations for biomed. You can go with Japan's regulations. But you don't like Japan's construction regulations to build your lab. So for building your lab, you go with Netherlands construction regulations. This basically guarantees you can get anything done with the safety of the world's best and quickest regulations. Sorry, Canada, no one's gonna pick you because you're a failing state ran by the human equivalent of Beyond Meat. There's one problem. Little problem, not that big of a deal. I'm sure they can deal with it. Honduras has a new socialist government, and they don't like the Zetes. They got rid of the Zetes immediately. Honduras' fear is that so much wealth will concentrate in the Zetes that it will surpass the power of the government and create a new banana republic. Prospera got in the game early, and they're safe under the jurisdiction of the Zetes for the next 50 years. And the government will have to pay them $10 billion if they violate the treaty, which is 1/3 of the country's entire GDP. So probably a bad idea. This one's a little weird to me. Why would you want to drive business out of your country? It's a new world, baby. You can't stop the tech train. I'll get the gene therapy. I'll get Neuralink. I don't give a I'm sick of these Luddites trying to live like monkeys. I want to dive into my phone and swim around in its digital glory. I want to be a computer. Did you know some land is still unoccupied and you can just go claim it? And once you do, every country will agree with you. You get to go to all the UN meetings and be a king. Just kidding, it doesn't work like that at all. But that doesn't stop some people from believing themselves. Our next paradise is something along those lines. If you've ever wanted to live in a tent in a swamp on a small piece of land between Croatia and Serbia, Liberland's for you. Located on the Danube River on the border of eastern Croatia, or Hrvatska if you're based, there exists a tiny 2.7 square mile piece of land that's allegedly not claimed, so a Czech man named Vit Jedlicka claimed it for himself to create a free country without unnecessary restrictions or taxation. And as with every great leader, no one's really sure of how serious he is, but my God, is he having fun. The average day in Liberland consists of traversing down the Danube River, getting chased by Serbian police, and then setting up a tent and straight chilling in a swamp for a few nights. As of 2022, the country has issued 900 passports out of 700,000 applications, and around 5,000 people have each paid $1,000 to become a citizen. The legislative plan is to use e-governance, where a blockchain ledger records all votes, proposals, passed and failed bills. Not much was really happening with Liberland until 2023 when a YouTuber went to visit and got harassed by Croatian cops. This looked bad for Croatia, which triggered them to back down and stop fucking with Liberland too much. Interest from both Serbia and Croatia in the plot of land has increased over the last few years due to complicated issues with the flow of the Danube River, so they didn't slow down their hassling without a fight. The Croatians deported Vit from Croatia and promptly invaded the micronation and dismantled some of the wooden structures the residents had built. I wish there was more to this story, but it's literally just a few funky guys who want to hang out in a swamp backed by thousands of people on the internet who want a new tax haven. That's all it ever is. It's always just a tax haven. Nobody wants to pay taxes. I don't want to pay taxes. I pay so much in taxes. I beg people on the internet every day to give me a green card to the US so I can stop paying as much taxes. I walk down the street in Toronto and I get shit thrown at me by Fent Maxers. I have to sit on a wait list for 2 years for minor surgeries. Liberland's dope. Run it. Pull it up, Jamie. I want to be ANCAP Shrek wallowing in my libertarian croat swamp. Okay, so take Liberland, make it convoluted, and make everyone a idiot. And you have our next special little country, named after the protagonist of Atlas Shrugged. Required reading if you want to hang with the Libertarian boys. While I was researching this video, this was easily the most complicated rigmarole I had ever laid eyes on. We're going to Chile, we're getting scammed out of all of our money, and we're going goo goo gaga mode. It's Gulch time. Our story begins with a man named Jeff Berwick, born in Edmonton, Alberta. After starting a company in Vancouver and losing all his money in the early 2000s dot-com bubble, he swore off the West, became an anarcho-capitalist, and left the country for good. Berwick's life for the next 10 years isn't very well documented. He was a very early adopter of Bitcoin, starting an online blog called The Dollar Vigilante to promote anarcho-capitalist Bitcoin and gold trading. He even opened the first Bitcoin ATM in Cyprus in 2013. It's around here when he starts to dream even bigger. What if, and hear me out on this one, because this one's fucking crazy, there was a new country with no taxes, no regulations, and we trade in Bitcoin. Crazy. No, I know, that's hence, Gulch was born. Jeff and his two partners, John Coben and German Ezegir, would secure some new land about 1 hour west of Santiago, Chile, to build their libertarian paradise, naming the new development Gulch after the Atlas Shrugged protagonist John Galt. The plan was simple. acquire the land, subdivide it, and sell it to freedom-seeking Westerners, receiving investments worth tens of thousands of dollars that were promised to be repaid by the community's business ventures, mainly a 125-acre avocado and lemon farm that allegedly existed. There's just one small problem, guys. It's not that big of a deal, small issue. I'm sure we can figure it out. The land doesn't have water rights, and it wasn't zoned for sale, and you actually don't own anything. It's unclear whether the Chuds 3 knew this from the beginning and were trying to scam their buyers, or they were just actually retarded. But regardless, they continued to receive hundreds of thousands of dollars of payments between 2013 and 2014, all while scrambling to make this whole thing right. During all of this, a fourth partner joined, named Ken Johnson, who saw the whole thing as an opportunity to get rich as off an affinity scam, a scam that targets members of a specific ideological group. Ken, who had literally no money, cred, or reputation in libertarian circles, began calling the shots. In an attempt to fix the problem, he acquired water rights to land next to Galt's Gulch for $6.5 million. Planned to be paid in installments, even though he had no money or investors behind him. No one's entirely sure how much money was spent or made, or if there was any business ledger kept at all. All we know is that Ken and Jeff, who were the two majority shareholders in Galt's Gulch, were royally Enter our next fighter, Mario Del Real. Del Real, a Chilean businessman and known swindler, offered to help the boys out and fix the whole thing up, John Taffer bar rescue style. Because at this point, they could no longer receive wire transfers due to fraud accusations. To fix this, Del Real offers his 26-year-old daughter's bank account to receive all the money from investors that was being sent to them at the time, and offered to trade 50% ownership in his mining company for 50% ownership in Galt's Gulch. However, in this process, and nobody really knows how, Del Real ended up receiving 99% ownership of Galt's Gulch, making him the vast majority shareholder. Ken Johnson claims the documents were tampered with after they were signed, but the most likely answer, according to investigators, is that the contract was written in Spanish, which Ken Johnson could not read. It's around this time that one of the original purchasers of the land, Wendy Elroy, receives an email saying the land was never legal to sell because it doesn't have water rights. By the time Wendy had gone public with this, the original investors, who had spent collectively $10.5 million on the project, made a website called the Galt's Gulch Recovery Team in an attempt to recoup the money. Money that had spent 2 years being passed around in undocumented land transfers and business acquisitions. No one's been charged for this yet. All the boys have been lying low since 2014. It is notable that John Coben, claiming to be the most neoliberal person ever, shot a socialist protester in Chile and is now in prison for 11 years. But I'd recommend all of you to check out the Galt's Gulch Recovery website if you want just like complete nitty-gritty details from all of the investors. You can even buy this cool t-shirt. I really want this t-shirt actually. If they still sell these, I really want this t-shirt. Now let's go all the way back to the beginning, to the Free State Project. Remember that? Before the schemes and the grifts, it was just me and you talking about New Hampshire? That was nice. Now I have psychic damage. A lot of what we've covered so far hasn't exactly exposed the folly of the ideology on a material level. We've had crypto exits, micronations, and network states. But what would it actually be like to live somewhere with no rules? Not just like no taxes, but also no garbage day. There's a group of free staters who took things just that far. The New Hampshire Freetown Project. The Freetown Project was a splinter group of the Free State Project in the early 2000s, and they had the plan to create the freest town in America. Very small towns often have very low municipal government turnout, so if you got the numbers, they're really easy to occupy. And this is exactly what happened to Grafton, New Hampshire, a town of under 1,000 people. About 300 Free Staters made the move to Grafton with the plan to infiltrate the town's government and cut the budget for literally everything, voting to decrease the town's budget by 30% within the first few years of their occupation, and facing very little civic engagement from Grafton's residents. They dreamed of privatizing services like garbage collection, but the problem is that when you have a town of under 1,000 people near the Vermont border in rural New Hampshire, it's probably not going to become the epicenter of technology and industry in the US. So the services that got cut back were just fully lost from the community. And by the mid to late 2000s, Grafton had become a dump. Potholes went unfilled, crime and domestic disputes skyrocketed, and police calls rose by 200 per year even though crime was dropping statewide. The number of registered sex offenders increased from 8 in 2006 to 22 in 2010. Par for the course with libertarians. But it wasn't the crime or the pedos that was the final blow for the Freetown Project. It was the bears. These sissy bitch libertarians were so ideologically driven, so committed to their doctrine, that they refused to dispose of trash properly or purchase certified hard-to-open garbage bins. That's just the man trying to keep you down, dude. You don't have to fucking dispose of garbage, just throw it on the fucking ground, dude. Those are just rules. Wow, their dedication to libertarianism is so beautiful, said the bears, who then invaded the town, ate all the garbage, entered their homes, and even attacked the woman. You can't make this up. The town was overrun by bears because libertarians thought that green bins were fascist. You see, the Freetown Project missed a crucial detail that might have just saved Grafton. Sometimes, rules have a purpose. Sometimes, when you're forced to buy a specific kind of garbage bin by the municipal government of your small rural town, it's not because they hate you, it's because they want to help you. And also, keep the bears out. Before we reach the bottom, I want to give an honorable mention to the coolest libertarian paradise that never was, the Citadel in Idaho. In the early 2010s, Christian Alan Carradine had a vision of living inside a medieval city where everyone owned guns and didn't pay taxes. Novel, I know. He'd call this new city the Citadel, and he'd build it in Idaho. He was also a convicted felon who extorted a small local mall by convincing them he was a terrorism expert and then forcing them to hire him to help them for their terrorism plan, and did like 30 months in jail for it, but that's fine. I don't give a anymore. The new walled city would be made for gun-owning Christian Americans. 7,000 far-right patriots were welcome to move to the town, open small businesses, and work at the gun factory they were going to open. All the children would be trained with an AR-15 rifle after the age of 13 and given 1,000 rounds of ammunition. There's a nifty little website where you can see all their plans and schematics and even calculate what your rent would cost, depending on the size of home and where you wanted it in the Citadel. And that's it. It never got built. Why? Because it's stupid. If libertarianism was easy, then why has no one successfully done it? At least communists get it for a few decades and then fall apart, but like libertarianism has literally never even got off the ground. The only successful one we've talked about so far is Prospera, and that's barely libertarianism. It's just regulations done better. You know what this list has been missing so far? Death. I want a true libertarian. I want a true Randian objectivist who was so self-serving he lied his way to the top of society and killed over 100 people in the process. It's time to wrap this adventure up with our most selfish and deadly attempt at a libertarian paradise so far, the Republic of Poyais. Born on Christmas Eve, 1786, Gregor MacGregor, son of Dan MacGregor, an East India Trading Company captain affectionately known as Gregor the Handsome, was destined for greatness. Joining the British Army at the age of 16 just before the breakout of the Napoleonic Wars, he quickly met a rich woman named Maria Bowater. The two married in 1805, and he used his newfound benefactory wealth to purchase the rank of captain in the British Army for £900. MacGregor was known for his obsession with aesthetics and refused to leave the house in anything less than the full captain regalia. After deploying to Portugal for the Peninsula War, he requested discharge very quickly. After an increasingly intense disagreement with a superior that was, quote, of a trivial nature, MacGregor's former battalion in Portugal, the 57th Foot, would become famously known as the Diehards for their heroicism in the Peninsula War on May 16th, 1811, a nickname that MacGregor would continue to associate himself with even though he left the battalion a year prior. After leaving the army, he moved to Edinburgh with his wife at the age of 23, still donning his official garb and parading around town in a gaudy chariot. Liking this life, he then moved to London to become a professional socialite, until his wife and main source of income died in December 1811. While he was trying to do the whole influencer thing, as every great 20-something man eventually does, he met General Francisco de Miranda, a general in the Venezuelan Wars of Independence. After seeing the respect that an actual war hero was treated with, he realized he needed more adventure in his life and set sail for Venezuela. After he arrived in Venezuela, he offered his services to General Miranda and introduced himself as Sir Gregor, a knight of the Portuguese Order of Christ, and ex-officer of the famed British Diehards, neither of which were true. He was immediately promoted to rank of colonel and was introduced to his next girl boss benefactor wife, whose name I don't want to say, so I'll put on the screen. To MacGregor's credit, his tenure with the Venezuelan army was long and decorated. Notably, he successfully organized a 34-day-long retreat through uninhabited jungle after the Spanish army forced him to do so. After 8 years of fighting with the Venezuelans on the Caribbean coast, MacGregor wound up on the Mosquito Coast, an area of empty jungle on the Gulf border of Nicaragua and Honduras. It's here that his biggest grift begins. Allegedly, King George Frederick Augustus, the leader of a mixed-race indigenous people descending from shipwrecked African slaves and native Hondurans, had gifted MacGregor 8 million acres of land on the coast, an area greater than the size of Wales. MacGregor had plans to cultivate this land into the new world's next country, and he planned to do so by getting wealthy Londoners to make the move. On the trip back to London from the Caribbean, he named the new country, which he now allegedly owned, Poyais, and crowned himself the Prince of Poyais. Upon returning to London, MacGregor's reputation had preceded him as a war hero of the 57-foot diehards and a patriot who fought Spain for almost a decade. He finally achieved the influencer socialite status he always dreamed of. Through his time in London, his Poyais lie continued to grow in magnitude, claiming that Poyais already had a government, civil service, and a military with specific uniforms for each rank, even creating a 355-page guide for potential settlers of the land, which featured a sketch of the imaginary capital St. Joseph, a bustling city of 20,000 with waterfront mansions. It's the early 1820s. Britain had just defeated Napoleon and the economy was booming. And then a war hero shows up offering freedom and opportunity in the new world. Who wouldn't want a slice of the pie? MacGregor began selling lands in Poyais at 4 shillings an acre and received a loan from the Bank of London to the tune of £200,000. MacGregor's first wave of 70 settlers to Poyais set sail from London on September 10th, 1822. And in one final act of good graces from MacGregor, he offered to exchange their British pounds for Poyais dollars 1-to-1, a currency that he had printed himself and literally had no value. The first ship was followed by another ship of 200 settlers in January 1823. Upon arriving to Poyais, the settlers found no sign of civilization. Thinking they simply must have landed in the wrong area, they stayed put, waiting for the government of Poyais to come find them and whisk them off to their new properties they purchased back in London. However, it quickly became apparent that no one was coming to save them. After being found by the chief magistrate of Belize and being rescued, dozens had already died of disease and malnourishment, with only around 50 of the original 270 making it safely back to London. At which point, MacGregor had already sent 5 other ships to the imaginary country, 3 of which were intercepted by the Navy and turned back around after the original survivors showed up in London. The news of the scam dominated the headlines and MacGregor was a wanted man. But this didn't faze MacGregor, who had already made his way to Paris, pulling the same scheme again. Now an incredibly wealthy man. Throughout the mid-1820s in Paris, MacGregor amassed more funds and loans, even setting up another ship to set sail from France. But the French government became concerned when people were requesting passports for a country they had never heard of, and MacGregor's final boat never made it out of Paris. After being swiftly arrested in Paris, MacGregor concocted a 5,000-word document declaring his innocence, reportedly made entirely of fictitious facts about his rank in the military, his family, and his past achievements. This was somehow enough to get him off. At this point, he has sent hundreds of people to their death in a fake country. I guess it doesn't surprise me that he somehow got himself off trial as well. After this, he would return to London and continue the operation on a much smaller scale. And up until 1837, he was still selling land for a fake country to whoever would fall for his schemes. After his wife died in 1838, he immediately returned back to Venezuela, where he was welcomed with open arms, given back his old rank in the army, offered pension, and paid back pay for all the years he was not in Venezuela. He died wealthy and respected in 1845 in the Caribbean city of Caracas in Venezuela, given a full formal military funeral, and remembered fondly as a Venezuelan war hero. He was never punished for his crimes for sending almost 180 people to their death. I came into this video as someone who was sympathetic and interested in libertarianism. Someone who would have called himself a libertarian when he was younger. I want to tell you all some wacky stories about dreamers, crypto startups, microstates, and people who thought they knew more than the sum total of human history and government. And after weeks of research and writing, I finished this video completely pilled on the fact that with all its complexities, nuances, and often needless bureaucracy, we in the West are probably doing close to the best we can running society. If starting a new country from scratch based on entirely new ideas was viable at all, you'd think someone would have done it by now. And here we are, with not a single successful attempt at a libertarian paradise besides a few special economic zones, sort of. Are we living in a matrix of Kafkaesque rule that keeps us from creating true innovation and upward mobility? In some ways, yes. Is this preventing you from living a rich, fulfilling life full of community, success, and friendship? No. If you think the reason you're unhappy is because you live in the first world that has too many taxes, building regulations, and garbage codes, you probably have a lot more to figure out before you try to start your own country. I encourage you to stop running and push your country in the direction you want to see it go. We're not going to fix our problems if we keep running away. And that includes running away to a floating platform in Thailand with your hot wife. Never kill yourself. Always aim up to make the world a better place. I don't know if you know this, but life just gets more and more exciting until you die.
Freetown.